Welcome to day number 70 of 365. Today we are putting all of the lessons together into a visual diagram so that we understand how the soul body operates in the physical realm every single day. So more of a practical understanding of how we can perceive our environment. We've been practicing with different skills such as using resonancy, like the word Om or Bijas, the vibrational tones that we can enunciate and say out loud to retune our bodies. But we've also been looking at physical structure such as colors, chakras, and repeating numbers and numerology. Now, how do we put all these things together and understand how our brain processes it through our heart so that our soul can come back to life? We're going to start very slowly, and I'm going to kind of weave out and explain everything. The first things that we need to understand is that there are two channels that we perceive in terms of sound, as we know, and that is our left and our right side of our body, or our left ear and our right ear. And as you can see here, this is the sound perception, or the waves that we can feel. There's also additional waves, though, in association with vibration and thought that go up and down. And this is the polarity that we discussed in the days before. So if you haven't seen the polarity video, examining polarity and understanding what magnetism and polarity is, watch that video before you come here. Or maybe this one might make more sense and this one could work for you better. But of course, there are positive and there are negative vibrations in thought, or positive thoughts, negative thoughts, stuff like that. So let's go back here and start from the left and to the right. So from the left side, as we've understood throughout this journey, it is known as Ida, or the lunar channel of our body. This is where we get more cooling and reflective mental thoughts, right? It is how our body processes the active tapas and energy that we're cultivating through our solar side, which is on the right side, which we'll discuss in just a second. Now, oftentimes, because this is a more reflective and a mental, subtler form of energy, we will feel this in terms of vibration, sound, and subtle sensation. And an example of subtle sensation is like when you get goosebumps or your hairs rise above your skin. This is a very, very subtle body sensation coming from your lunar side, or your left side of your brain or left body, right? It perceives sound incredibly well. If you've ever had your ears ring and stuff like that, you're being very much asked to examine that. And then also vibration, right? If you feel any sort of interchange going on that might appear within itself that's hard to describe, that is definitely going to be your current vibration. Now, moving on, hopping over to the right side, right over here. The right side we understood as Pingala, or the solar side of our body. And you can think of these as the more feminine side of the brain and the masculine side of the brain and how they fuse together, or you can just think about them as lunar and solar. But here we are on the solar side, and this is where we get warmth, we get our dynamic self, our physical self. We move forward through physical force, structure, and form. This is how we manifest. We use our logic, a lot of our building skills to actually construct the reality that we are envisioning and we're feeling here on our lunar side. And of course, I use my own structures that help me. Everyone's structure is different because, as I was saying, when we cultivate the personality of this Godhead that we connect to, we all have different forms and reflections on it, right? So for me, what works best is understanding what's worked best for me in my life, which is numbers, repeating numbers, 11, 11, 12, 12, 8, 8, 8, for example, and then seeing signs like this on license plates, A, Om, and then also further colors and chakras, or the understanding that certain colors hold a certain chakra or emotional lunar feeling, reflective feeling, to allow me to process even faster. And when you can get these ideas running on autopilot for yourself, you can start processing your reality more from the soul perspective, rather than what comes with the processes of only individually using these things. And now I'm going to show you kind of that was the left side, this was the right side, but what happens in between all of that? Well, in between all of that, we have polarity happening, or our magnetism, right? So depending on where our thoughts are with ourself, or our association with ourself, we will have either lighter and brighter thoughts, or we will have dim and heavy thoughts. And by dim and heavy thoughts, I simply mean that we return back to mainly the structure, the mass, and the physical that comes with the solar, and we come back to our body, and we start kind of mentalizing everything and constructing it in too much of a way to where we can't really emotionally process what's happening, right? So it's important to raise your vibrations by simply processing the emotional background of why you're feeling the way you're feeling, because oftentimes we feel dim and heavy because of structure, mass, and the physical. And when we've been talking about our association with the physical world, we know that this means like our career, our job, our finances, our family life, the things that we wake up to and wake up our eyes to and basically dynamically move through every single day, right? So oftentimes when we're thinking this way, that can often happen because the more and more you associate with the physical body or your physical self, the more you will be attached to the gravity, right, or the magnetism of the earth, and the more you'll feel more like just the regular everyday human, when in fact we're actually really beautifully calibrated that we don't have to feel that way all the time, because we have what's called the positive flow state, or when we can perceive all of this from left to right in a balanced way and still bring our energy upwards. This makes us feel lighter, it's a more blissful state, and oftentimes it can feel auspicious because we don't really know what the next part of this journey is going to be. We just kind of trust that it will work out, and that's the spiritual aspect of it, because you're now surrendering to your perception. You're surrendering to understanding your perception on a multiple dimensional level rather than just staying in certain areas where you kind of get trapped in. Because you can see if you keep perceiving things more, let's say, on your Eta side or your lunar side, you can see how quickly you might disagree with someone that's perceiving things very quickly on their solar side. Someone who is panicking maybe in their root chakra for survival and has to build their structure in order to feel the emotional security of the soul again might be fighting heavily on their solar side. Whereas someone who understands and has reflected on their life that maybe has been through something like that before, I'm just giving a raw example, could probably process that the whole entire structure collapsed because there was no balance or reflection or cooling aspects of feeling this story unravel. Oftentimes when we get into the solar energy, we're rushing forward very quickly without really reflecting on everything, so that when we reach plateaus again or we reach challenges, we kind of like explode because we've had all this energy stored up from all this solar sun that we've been storing in, right? Where if we don't really pay attention to our lunar side or the Eta and the other perceptions of our personality, then it's going to feel like a tug of war. And this is what that polarity is, right? That is what the positive and the negative is. It's not the fact that it's a positive thought or a negative thought. It's just that the more you associate with the physical realm, the more mental challenges you're going to have. Whereas the more you can associate on a soul level or recognize that everybody perceives things left and right differently, and that you're going to have to figure out your best way of showing that, then you get closer to the soul level, because you understand that everybody plays a part in your perception, plays a part in your personality, right? And that's when we get to the very first three chakras: the root, the sacral, and the solar. Because when we can start to understand that there is a spiritual, a mental, and a physical connection, right, we can then merge them all together. And these start forming the base energies that formulate our basically energetic body. Is if you can remember that these vibrations and these sounds, the ringing in your ears, the colors that you see, the exact perfect timing at a certain moment, when you start paying attention to those things, they start forming your kind of arc as a solar human, right? So you have your root, which we've already talked about, and I'll write here live, which we've already talked about, has two sides. You can look at it from the, once again, lunar and solar side. On the lunar side, the root chakra, which is the emotions and stuff like that, this is heavily associated with passion and creativity. Whereas the solar side is more associated with, when we're talking about our root, physical connection, or a very, very easy way to put it, physical connection, the vice of it, which is I think that's how you spell it. I might have misspelled that. Pleasure, right? And pleasure is interchangeable with the positive and the negative, as we said in this chart, because that can also be temptation. So as you can see here, it's required that we balance kind of these sides of our perception, because they allow us to transcend past the exact opposites, right? Physical connection could be saying hello to people every day, giving hugs to people every day. That's a physical, solar, dynamic action. But on the vice of that, maybe the physical connection can transform into temptation, right? And pleasure. So that's on that end. The passion and the creativity can transform into, on the vice, control and manipulation. Now, we don't know we're doing these things unless we can actually observe that we're doing these things. Oftentimes, the control and manipulation comes from the passion and creativity because somebody in this energetic transfer has experienced a certain level of this passion and creativity, that they understand that that's what works for them. They understand that this allows them to be positive. But on the negative side, if they're not experiencing that or creating new ways to experience that, aka new perspectives, then they can be in this tug of war of fighting for their passion and creativity, and that starts to make control and manipulation. This happens on both sides. You have to remember, males, females, and in between, we all have lunar and solar energy. We all have feminine and masculine qualities. So this is happening within everybody. This is not targeted at a specific person, okay? Now, physical connection versus pleasure and temptation. Well, in a physical connection sense, it makes us feel happy when we feel seen by others, right? So let's say feeling seen. But then on a pleasure and temptation side, it's now taking physical connection and making literally chemically a sensory response. So whereas this is a more natural happiness from the physical connection we have with human beings every day, the other one is a more, let's just say, I don't know how to word this, but I would say maybe the pleasure and temptation is coming more from a sensory overload. So as you can see, there's balance between each side. And that's where we start here at the root. That's why I have the root frequency challenge, 30 days coming for you guys, because I want you to know that this is the starting phase, is balancing passion and creativity versus the physical connection and the senses, and understanding that our senses don't control our body. The root of the problem is that you're fighting for your survival, right? So on the top here, you have your, let's just say, let's say, in a very funny way, creative purpose. And on the bottom of the root chakra, you have survival of the fittest. Far more physical, survival of the fittest, far more soul body, creative purpose. Survival of the fittest was a coined term because we had scientists come out trying to explain how the human brain operates and how we have to feed it in order for it to tell itself that it makes sense what it's doing. So, one, you have people competing against each other. What methods are best? This is how you do it. This has worked for years. I survived the Black Plague. And then on the other hand, you have the people that have continuously and constructively been working towards understanding their purpose and moving out of survival, right, and into creation. And that journey then becomes sacred, because when you start doing that, you get into your sacral chakra. You start unlocking your root. Instead of sensory overload and just kind of reacting and responding and not paying attention to kind of all aspects of yourself, instead of doing that, now you're actively creating yourself, and therefore you start to begin to create a sacred connection with yourself once again. And this can be reestablished because the sacral chakra is located right at your stomach and your belly button. And that makes a lot of sense because this has directly to do with birth. So you start realizing that all this energy you've been experiencing is very much associated with the birth or creation of who you are, right? And that's that life force energy. This is what prana helps balance. This is what our breath helps balance. When we can understand how to breathe properly, we can perceive properly, and therefore we can be open to the interpretation of our ascension, right? So that's how we move this energy. We begin to move this energy. And now birth for the sacral, I'm more going to say birth remembrance. Because a lot of the survival aspects or survival of the fittest also come from birth, right? So this is like the birth root of your energy, if that makes sense. And this is birth remembrance. It's like remembering why you're here to do what you're supposed to do, if that makes sense. And no, it's not just sensory overload and making babies. It's also remembering your divine duty to keep the balance within the cosmos. That then brings you into the third, which is the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is our confidence, is our willpower. AKA free will. Now that we understand that who we are and what we come from and what we're supposed to be doing, and we can keep coming back to that to protect ourselves, to make the journey sacred, right? We can then shine because now we're using our free will, our willpower, our confidence. And the solar plexus is yellow, right? This is often referred to as the sun. So we have the sun as yellow. We have the sacral stomach belly as orange. And then we have the root as red, or AKA the fire, the tapas. That's what they call it in yoga, the tapas. So you have the fire burning, illuminating within finally, because you're now in your creative purpose. As your creative purpose begins developing, you begin remembering these sacred memories, right? These memories of feeling amazing, of feeling good. That's a birth remembrance. Remember, life is all about life and death, birth and rebirth. So when I say birth remembrance, this isn't related to your maybe real birth, which would be more of the root, right? When you first came into this life as a child. This would be related to the birth of your energy, the rebirth of your energy, the birthing and rebirth of your energy. Now, when you can maintain control and power of that, understanding your system, in which we've shown over here, you then can move in free will, willpower, and confidence. Yellow, orange, and red. Now, let me show you how this all comes together. The three foundational chakras that start in the physical body. There's more chakras that ascend into the cosmic body, but the physical body are the root, sacral, and solar. Red, orange, and yellow is the color of, and I'm going to just kind of go crazy, and we're just going all the way over here now. Okay, so if we took all this information, red, orange, and yellow, red, orange, and yellow, Roy, is the sunset and sunrise. Sunrise, sunset, interchangeable, right? This is how we can start connecting the solar aspect of who we are, understanding our solar side and our lunar side, right? The sun and the moon. When the sun rises and the sun sets, it is important, or it would be important to take note of your first three chakras. Are they balanced? Do you know your purpose of waking up today? Are you surviving to be who you are? Or are you just going to get up and be who you are? Because you have the free will to do so and the confidence to do so. Notice how I'm not talking about the opposites of these yet, because once you can kind of get past the root or the root frequency, these can open up so much easier. So the sunrise and sunset is simply a reminder of your free will. And isn't that so freaking cliche, right? That like, well, no duh, I just woke up, I have another day alive, so what can I do to be a great person, right? What can I be to be a great person on this day? Not the last day, just on this day. Sunrise, sunset, reminder of your free will, which automatically balances your first three chakras. 1, 2, 3. Right? Red, orange, yellow. This isn't numerology. I'm just associating the numbers with the chakras, the first starting chakras. So, root, sacral, and solar. Beautiful. Because as soon as your confidence and your willpower comes up, we finally get into the next phase, which is our anahata, or our heart. We'll go into this in part 2, but this is a basic understanding of how you perceive your reality and how you can start perceiving your reality on a more practical sense so that you don't lose track of it. Think of this as your like free diagram, and I will make something of an explanation of this whole entire thing in the description so that you can understand. But if you don't understand anything, feel free to ask questions, or if you need something that is more in alignment with what your structure is, then 100% let me know, because this is interchangeable. This is all interchangeable, but it's understanding very important themes of the energy body through yogic observation. So that is day number 70. I hope that you find this extremely helpful, and I hope that you can remember that you have the option to lead the life that you want to lead every single day. And I'm here to help every single one of you. So thank you for joining me. I have had a wonderful time finally explaining kind of what I've been learning and what I've been feeling in this entire journey, and we have only just begun. I will see you tomorrow for the next day. Have a good one.